Alright, so hello all. I am super excited you have joined me here. Whoops. So let's see if this will work. Nope, not quite. Alright, so I am going to try to talk a little bit about how I use Zoom in virtual teaching. So I do not, like I said earlier, I do not really do these live events. I like to do shorter Instagram stories, so I'm doing my best. Try not to judge too harshly. I know some of you on Instagram are here too. Okay, so just to go over who I am Michelle Rose, and so I am a full-time virtual teacher at a K-12 virtual school. So we are virtual all the time, all grades, K through 12. So my students aren't in a hybrid program. They don't, go to a school and then go to a library. Most of my students are attending from their own homes, and they are attending live in my classes. So like I said, still getting used to my setup. Okay, so specifically for what I teach middle school and high school general music. I also started a virtual band / orchestra, so I have kind of a flex instrumentation on that one, and then a virtual choir. I also direct the IMES Virtual Honor Band, and definitely check that out. International Music Education Summit, a great conference, completely online, and so some really cool projects are happening too. There's a virtual choir project, so definitely check that out. Elisa is awesome. All right, so now let's get into it. So let's talk about Zoom for a little bit. So Zoom is one of my favorite things to use as a virtual teacher. So Zoom is really great because it is free for up to 40 minutes. And so you can see down here, I have this minimized. And so Zoom, free for up to 40 minutes. So it's a great option if you are looking for something budget friendly. And also there is an option to call in. And so that might help to make it a little bit more accessible to students who do not have internet access. And so I'm just gonna change this, sorry. Okay, I know you can see my whole screen. Like I said, don't really do these live events often. Tried to hack this together because I know a lot of you are being asked like tomorrow to be doing, making plans. So, like I said, Zoom has an option to call in. You can give a student a number. And so if they don't have internet access at home or devices at home, that might be a possibility. Now, someone did mention earlier to check with the website because this feature may be more limited just due to the influx of users. But the paid option is not super unreasonable, especially if you're going to just be using it for maybe a month or two. So it's $14.99 a month. And I'm definitely not saying, shell anything out from your own pocket, but just, in case your school might be allowing you some budget money, Zoom would definitely be the way to go. And so Zoom is really great because, let me bring it up here. So, this is Zoom, and so there are a couple different things. You can see the people, so you'll be able to kind of see your students here. You'll also be able to see them all lined up in this one screen. So I like to use the gallery view, which allows me to kind of see students Brady Bunch style all at one time, and so that is really helpful to kind of get a full picture of my students. There's chat function. You can do polls, all these kind of things right built into Zoom. And like I said, it's free for the first 40 minutes and it's great. I have a paid educator subscription through my school, but again, in a pinch, the free version definitely works really well. So now that we talked a little bit about that, I'm going to talk about how I do rehearsals through Zoom, and then I'm going to explain the method behind it. So just be patient with me, okay? Because I know a lot of questions are going to come in. I think the main thing with virtual teaching is that you have to get really creative to kind of get what you want, but it is possible. So for rehearsals, so this includes my choir rehearsals, and then like I said, I have a kind of a flex ensemble of band orchestra instruments. So I have students come into my Zoom room with cameras on, but their mics turned off. And you might be thinking, wait a second, I am a music teacher. Why would I have my students turn their mics off? How am I going to conduct rehearsal? I'll get there, okay? So, like I said, I use the gallery view option in Zoom to see students Brady Bunch style, and they can see me. And so, since students are muted, I rely on a lot of visual cues, like breathing, posture, checking fingerings, all that kind of thing. And so, you might be thinking, all right, so how am I going to hear them, or how am I going to do rehearsal if I can't hear them and I can only see them? Here is what I do. So the week before, or a couple days before, depending how much time you have, I usually have students do this a week in advance. Students will record their parts into Smart Music. Now, Smart Music is free right now, so if you have been curious about Smart Music or you want to check it out, definitely go do this. Will I make this PowerPoint available after the live stream? Sure, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can totally do that. I made this PowerPoint in like 30 minutes, so I'll clean it up a little bit, and then, yeah, I can definitely make that available. Probably put it on my website or something like that, but I will definitely let you know. Okay, so I assign, and usually it's just a chunk. I don't assign the whole piece, so I assign a chunk of music for students, and they record that part into Smart Music. Then I go into Smart Music and I listen to what students have recorded. And so typically, some things pop out. Maybe, something specific, like all the soprano ones are having trouble on that really high note. They're, not putting enough space in. So I am primarily a band director, but slowly getting my head around choir. But, that kind of thing where it might be section specific, or everybody is totally missing the dynamics, or everybody is totally playing it, this without articulation, something like that. So I kind of get my, what I'm going to talk about in rehearsal in advance. So it's not really as the piece is happening, it's in advance. So then when I get into rehearsal and all the students are muted, we start by doing a warm-up. So again, it'll be super disorienting not to hear students at first, but for example, for my band warm-up, we always start with long tones. So I'll say, okay, take out exercise number 1, long tones. So my students will all bring up their instruments. Again, no sound is going to come at me because of all the different lag times. It's just not possible right now to have, that full ensemble live. So what I do is, B flat, long tones, exercise 1, and I'll count them off. I usually use a metronome on my phone just in case the picture is distorted. And again, if you are having students call in, they'll still be able to hear the metronome click. And so I'll just conduct, B flat, C, and then we'll go through it at the end, fermata, and off. And like I said, you really messes with you at first, but I try to kind of, sing the parts or play the parts in my head so I don't get lost. And so that way, so I can't hear students in real time, but, if I want to hear a specific part of the music, I'll assign that in Smart Music. So after our warm-up, call it our musical broccoli. So the things that students won't necessarily do on their own, even if you send them off with beautiful long tones. I was in high school once, and I did become a music teacher one day, but to be honest, I didn't practice my long tones no matter how many times my band director told me. Sorry. And so the long tone practice I got was in actual rehearsals. So that's why you may consider at least doing a couple of these rehearsals just to get those musical broccoli moments in, so students are still maintaining at least the technique. All right, after we do our warm-up, we'll move into rehearsal. And this is where these Smart Music parts come in. So I'll say, okay, today we're going to rehearse the ending, find 4 measures to the end. All right, so see these accents. I really want you to emphasize these accents. So play this as, with your accents, or we're all missing this crescendo. So marking your part, here's the crescendo. Okay, let's play it. 1, 2, ready, and accents, crescendo. And so you're not going to hear anything, but students are still getting that feedback and practicing it. Now you may be saying, well, what if they're doing it wrong? And so again, that's where these smart music recordings come in. And so even if you're not using smart music, you can do something as simple as having students, record themselves, using Flipgrid or any sort of recording. But the correction kind of comes afterwards. It's not in the moment. So is that 100% ideal? No, but it is how I have made it work. And so it's, like I said, virtual teaching is a challenge. It's different than teaching in person, but it can be done. Okay, so now you're thinking, great, so I can hear kids one-on-one and I can, give them corrections, all of that. How do I hear what they sound like as a group? So here's what I do. About every 2 weeks or so, since it's a little bit time consuming, I combine all the parts in GarageBand so students can hear what they sound like together. So I just take all the smart music parts. If before students submit, there's a little save button. If they press that save button, it will download what they've recorded. And so then you can take all those parts and put them together, and you can hear what they sound like as a full ensemble. Like I said, that can be time consuming. So if you're only going to be out, a week or two, you probably won't need to do something like that. But if you are out indefinitely, even a month, this might be something you want to do in order to get an idea of how the full ensemble sounds. One thing that comes up, intonation. Also, rhythmic precision. When you're not playing with another group of people, to kind of listen and adapt, you really have to be precise in what you're doing. So some different things kind of come to light by having this different way of putting an ensemble together. So I'm just trying to keep up. If you are asking questions, I'm trying to get to them as often as possible. Are they playing to a metronome clip in smart music? Yes. So what I do is I enable the metronome clip, and so I tell students, make sure that you record with headphones. Now, if they can't, that's fine. But the metronome click will just be in the recording, but it's not the end of the world. But that way, I always put it at exactly. So there's an option in smart music. It says at least, I think, or you can choose the tempo essentially, and one of those is exactly. I always choose exactly because I want students' final submissions, if I'm going to put them all together as a full ensemble, they need to line up tempo-wise. So yes, thank you. Great question for that. So yeah, that is how I get them all to play together. All right, so let's talk a little bit more. So that's kind of how I run rehearsals. And like I said, it's a little bit disorienting, especially because you can't hear kids. And the corrections really have to come, if you're going to give them in the moment, you have to be looking at your students. You have to be looking at how they're breathing. You have to be looking at their fingers. You have to be looking at, what kind of shape their mouth is making. And sometimes I make my kids look at themselves in their cameras, and I say, okay, look at yourself. Now we're going to practice, ah. And so I have beginner kids, singing ah. And so they look at themselves and I make them sing ah and whatever exercise we're going to sing. So that kind of gives them the feedback that they're not just kind of staring into the abyss or staring at me, that they're also kind of looking at the other members of the choir or the band. Okay, so now, cool, you know how to run a rehearsal, but it's not super helpful if kids don't show up to rehearsal. So here are some tips that I have for you for getting kids to actually come to these kinds of rehearsals. So one thing that I suggest is to keep whatever your regular class time is. So if you're meeting, at 11:15 every day for music, for band, for choir, for orchestra, for guitar, whatever you're doing, try to keep that consistent so kids kind of have that trigger already in their brain. They already have that schedule. If you try to kind of schedule it at a random time every day, kids are not as likely to show up. So if you can keep your consistent or regular class time, awesome. Send reminder emails. So I send about a bajillion emails badgering my kiddos. So if you are leaving tomorrow, make sure you make the expectation that students have to check their student email every single morning. I know there are some exceptions where kids are not going to have access. Again, this is, you want to kind of take a survey if possible to see what kind of technology access your kids are going to have. If they're not going to be able to access their email, make sure you send them home with a slip of paper saying, okay, you're going to call into Zoom using this number at this time every day. And so if you can, I know some of you are already out of school, but if you are going to be out of school tomorrow, this is something you can set up pretty easily tonight. Next, you want to take attendance. And if you are feeling kind of overwhelmed by the fact that you're going to have to be monitoring so many things, you can, get a responsible kid to help you take attendance. Or if your significant other or someone, your roommate or someone is also home, you can be like, hey, can you just take attendance real quick? But you want to take attendance because then you want to email kids who did not show up. So even if the kids are not going to have, access to the internet right away, they'll at least have the recording of the rehearsal so they can go back and watch it. So record every rehearsal. That way, even if kids don't have internet access, they may be able to get it eventually once you all go back to school, or maybe, once an area in their community will be able to access that. So they'll still have that rehearsal time. They're not going to completely lose it if you record in Zoom. So yeah, and kids are going to forget. Things are going to come up. So that's why I always, as soon as class ends, I've got my recording, I send an email that says, we missed you today in rehearsal. So I try to frame it like that, like, we missed you, gotta come back. And then I said, hi, according to my records, you didn't show up to rehearsal today. That's okay. Well, I don't say that's okay. I don't remember. I can definitely send the template out, maybe with this PowerPoint. But I just have something, I plug in the link, then I just copy and paste it, send it to my kids, and it's done. It's a 5-minute process. Keep templates of the emails that you send, because you're going to be, if you're using email, if your kids are contacting you through email, the same things are going to come up over and over. I do a lot of copy, paste. So I have a whole document of my links and all of that, just ready to go. Okay, so let's talk about some Zoom pro tips. So you're thinking about getting kids to show up, you kind of know how you want to do your rehearsals. All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to effectively use Zoom beyond just like, oh, this is a cool thing. So you need to set classroom expectations again. So even though your students may know your classroom expectations in a physical space, when they get in a virtual space, it feels different. Just like, I don't know, people get bananas sometimes when they go online. They post bananas things online because they're in a different space. Like physically, face-to-face, maybe they wouldn't do those things. But in a virtual space, for some reason, even though I can see kids, things go out the window. So you want to make sure you have general expectations around video. So are you requiring students to use video? Make sure you tell them you got to show up in some clothes. I know that it seems kind of silly, but please, just to be safe, say you got to be fully clothed. Understanding chat and how you want to use that. So if you have a larger group, it can get out of control. So you can set settings in Zoom where the chat is not open all the time, or it's only going to you, helping students understand like you are to use the chat just for educational purposes. You're not going to go on a tangent about video games. I promise you it'll happen if you don't set those expectations from the beginning. So say, don't share any personal information due to FERPA. Don't stray off topic, keep it on topic. Make sure that you're not chatting other people while we're in rehearsal. And now for instrumentalists, it's going to be kind of hard for them to type. But my choir kiddos, they are the ones that like to kind of chat in the chat as if I can't see them. So sometimes, and I do allow chatting, just like you would allow chatting every so often in your rehearsal. But don't be afraid to rein it in and be like, okay, chat's coming off. Or turn chat off completely if you're afraid it's going to get out of hand, that kind of thing. Same thing, using the mic. What are the expectations around using the mic? I highly suggest that you turn on the setting in Zoom where kids come in automatically muted, because otherwise you might hear a whole cacophony of sounds if it's not already muted and they have to mute themselves. So put in muted when they come in, and then set expectations around when kids can use the mic. Are you going to call on them? Can they just turn the mute off themselves? Are you going to unmute them? So these are kind of things, classroom management things, that pop up in the virtual world that you don't have to unmute a kid in band class. They'll gladly shout out themselves. I'm just kidding. But there are just different ways that you kind of have to think about classroom management. Classroom management doesn't go away because you can, turn their chat off or their video off or anything like that. You got to set those expectations from the beginning. All right. Next, Zoom pro tip, make sure you record all your lessons. I kind of mentioned that briefly about getting kids engaged and making sure all kids have recordings, but record all your lessons. There is a setting in Zoom where you can set it to automatically record. I automatically record all of our lessons so I don't have to press the record button, because I promise you, you will forget. When you are thinking about your first, lesson and you're getting really excited, you're a little bit nervous, you haven't done something online, there's technical errors, take something off your plate, set it to automatically record. That way you can just grab the link, then make sure you're posting all of the links in one centralized location. So if you have Google Classroom, one centralized location. If you, have a different kind of LMS, one central location. If you have a class page, one central location. If you don't have any of those things, create a Google Doc, share it, view only, and tell kids, okay, this is where I'm going to put all of the recordings. Now, even though you're going to have your recordings all in one location, you still need to send that, you missed rehearsal, we missed you, here's the recording link, out to students. So it's good to have it in two places, as many places as students can find it. And it's also kind of easier for you if you need to go back and say, I need to take a look at this rehearsal. Then you can easily go and find it. You don't have to dig through your email or dig through Zoom. All right, so again, setting to automatically record. And so I just wanted to show you Zoom real quick. Here it is. Okay, so the settings, just over on the left here, there are tons and tons of settings here. So again, if you want to have telephone be enabled, make sure you click on this setting, telephone and computer audio, so that way kids can choose either. This one, so join before host. So I do have this checked because all of them are recorded. My kids have a procedure. There's nothing, whatever. But if you are doing this for the first time, I highly suggest taking this off. And so not allowing kids to join before host, which is you. All right. I would say don't require a password to get in. It kind of complicates things. And the easier that you can make anything virtually, the more likely kids will actually come. Okay. Here is where I was talking about muting. So mute participants upon entry, that's what you want to have checked. And so again, mute participants upon entry for that. Okay, now here is where you can change the chat settings. And so like I said, maybe for that first meeting, you want to have chat off so it's not another thing you have to worry about. In the very least, I highly suggest turning private chat off so that way kids aren't just like messaging each other in class, and so that way you don't have to monitor that. You can save the chat. So something I recommend doing so that way you don't have to, if something happens in chat, you can go back and reference it. All right, file transfer, that just means that you are able to send something out, send a file out while you are in Zoom. Now, if your kids are not used to being in Zoom and they don't have expectations, I recommend just turning this off, because as you can see, it says host and participants. So again, kids figure out they can send files. could, potentially be disastrous. So you can turn that off and, email out a file if needed to. Okay, so polling, again, another kind of cool feature. I don't really use it as much. I'm going to show you what I use, instead. But this allows another way for kids to kind of interact with something. All right, and then screen sharing. So I do have screen sharing turned on because I like to sometimes put students in individual rooms, have them share, and make sure that smart music is working for them, or that they're able to get logged in, or can help them if there are tech issues. But the other thing is, if you have students who you might just kind of click around and try to figure out things, maybe just enable it host only for that. Okay, whiteboard, again, another tool you could use in class to interact. So, all right, so let's see, there's a million things. I couldn't go through all of these. So let's see. So those are just kind of some basic features that you might consider turning on or off. Like I said, it'll just kind of depend on your group, but I would say the less, that you have to think about, especially in your first couple of rehearsals, the better. Like I said, virtual teaching, it's a little bit of an adjustment. You get better at it. It's just practicing like anything else. But that first time, the less you have, the better. Okay, next pro tip. As students enter, have them check their audio. So that way they can hear you right away, and they're not taking up rehearsal time just trying to troubleshoot that. So what I like to do is do a screen share welcome troubleshooting slide. And so in Zoom, you can share just part of your screen. So I like to do that. Just going down here. And so I'll just, under advanced portion of the screen, so I'll just kind of share this screen out. And so I have this actually, this is the size of the slides that I use for my rehearsal agendas and welcome slides. And so you can give them something to chat about or something like that. So that way they're not just kind of sitting. That's kind of, just in regular classrooms too. When kids are idle, they're not doing anything, that's when you can kind of get into trouble. So here is an example. So this is the IMES Honor Band rehearsal from Tuesday. So this is a virtual honor band, again, that I'm doing through the International Music Education Summit, also in partnership with Smart Music. So you can see here, I have the time that we'll get started. So usually I start 2 minutes after whatever the time is, just to give kids time to log in, get settled, all that. If you have kids logging in earlier, you can see here, I have, while you wait, log into Smart Music because you'll need it later, set up your instrument. So that way they have something specific they're doing right when they get in. Now, here's the important thing. So usually I play, some music as they're entering in Zoom. To do that, if you go into share, there's a little share computer sound down here. You can also do computer sound only, but whatever's playing on your computer will go into theirs. And so that's kind of an easy way to know right away if a student is not going to be able to hear, because they always know something will be playing. Now, in order to save you the headache of having to type into the chat furiously, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to troubleshoot together. If you can't hear, so I have it right on the screen right here. If you can't hear anything, click here, and I have that arrow next to the mic, and then click on test speaker microphone right here. So that way kids can kind of do that on their own, and you don't have to worry about troubleshooting that while you're rehearsing or while you're prepping for rehearsal. Okay, and then, all right, so I think that's my last Zoom pro tip for rehearsing. So if you have more specific questions, you are definitely welcome to try to put them in either in Facebook or checking Instagram, trying to as much as possible. But if I don't get to your question, definitely reach out. I'm in the Facebook group, the online teachers Facebook group. I spend most of my time though on Instagram, so that is kind of the best place to reach me, especially if you want to chat one-on-one. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about general music, and talking specifically about a wide range of general music and kind of my pro tips on that. And so I do use something called Blackboard Collaborate for my general music classes, because I don't necessarily need to see all of my students for general music. And also, I have a lot more general music students, so I have 275 eighth graders. I don't see them all at one time, but I do see a large chunk of them. And so having, even 100 kids at one time, the lag time with them all having their videos on is not, it's not great. So, and I also, like I said, don't necessarily need to see them to, teach them that. So, sorry, my dog. And the joys of teaching online is that, your dog will constantly interrupt you when you're doing important things. So, for general music, like I said, I usually use Blackboard Collaborate. However, you can also use Zoom. And so, let's talk about how you can do that. So, the main thing, don't just lecture, because here's the thing. I'm not doing a great job of this tonight. I am just lecturing at you, but it is really easy for you to just kind of click over to another tab and stop paying attention, and then you've missed 3 seconds or 3 minutes or 30 minutes of a presentation, and then you're lost in all of that. And so I know kids, I'm just going to open YouTube. I'm just going to chat with my friend. So if you're just lecturing, kids are going to tune out right away. I try to have some sort of student interaction after every single slide. So I call them my check-in questions. And so these might be polls, short answers. And my dog has picked the loudest toy. Thank you, favorite human Wesley, for taking care of that. Thank you all for your patience. Like I said, I don't do these live things very often, but all right. So be mindful of dogs and other distractions that can happen. They happen. They're going to happen to you as you teach virtually. It's okay. Admit it and just move on. All right, so polls, short answer. So having students type into the chat or using the mic for that. One thing I like to do is set a timer and say, okay, after, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, everybody type their answer into the chat. When the timer goes off, press enter. Everyone presses enter. It's a waterfall, but it gives kids time. It's not just that first kid who, is going to get the answer and then everyone else says, oh yeah, that. So you just kind of got to get creative on that. Now, here's what I especially like using Nearpod. So if you have not ever used Nearpod, oh my goodness, Nearpod is really awesome. So they have both a live feature and a student guided feature, and I'm going to give you a live demonstration of this in a moment. But the live feature, what I really like is all your students can log in no matter where they are, and you can control their screens. So if you move your slide, all of your students' slides move, no matter where they are. So all of my students are all over the state of North Carolina. I can have them all log into Nearpod. We can do a live lesson, and I can press next, and they're all moving at the same time. So I don't have kids working ahead. I don't have kids being lost, all of that. So it is really awesome. It's not just slides. I'm going to show you in a moment. There's lots of interaction. The cool thing is, though, even if students don't come live, there's a student guided one. And so I always give a link to the student guided one. So if a kid doesn't come to class, they can still follow along on their own with the recording after class. And so you can also give these student guided ones without, having to be live or a recording. Sometimes I use them as sub-plans if I have to be absent. Kids can work through the Nearpod on their own. There are assessments. You can, put in videos and You know, you can have them go to a website. Oops, sorry, Instagram people. You can have them do matching pairs and you know, all short answers, all these different things. So let me show you. So I want to show you two things. Let me show you Nearpod first. Okay. So, whoops. Okay. Nearpod. All right. So like I said, okay, it's called student paced, not student guided. So this is kind of my Nearpod right here. And so I was able to, I do have a platinum account. Thank you to Donors Choose. Shout out to all the donors who helped me to get there. But there is a free version that has most of the really awesome features that I use regularly. So check out the free version. Again, the free version is really substantial for that. So what I do is I set up 2 lessons. Like I said, I have the student pace and the live lesson. And in the recording, I say, okay, if you are here live, here is the link that you're going to use, and I put it in the chat. Or you can use the code if the code would be easier if you're not, you know, going to use a chat feature. You can say, okay, here's the code you use if you're here live. Now, this is only for people who are watching the recording. Here is the separate code, and I give them the student paced one. So like I said, when I get into this live lesson, it'll say, okay, here is the code. And so if you would like to join in, this can be the non-lecture part, but if you are seriously interested in joining in, you can go to join.nearpod.com and enter this code. The other thing that you can do is do this link. And so I will put that in the comments for anyone watching on Facebook. Sorry, Instagram people, you're separate. All right, so if you want to join in, like I said, okay, seeing some comments. You can go ahead there. And so the really neat thing is that then when people join, they'll show up here. So I will go ahead and join my own just to kind of see. So you can see if students are there. And so they'll show up. And so I always have kids put in their first initial and last name just to kind of confirm that it's them. It's just kind of a, like, if they type something silly into their name and they go, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, that was going to be it. You know, middle schoolers, they do that kind of thing. So if you press submit, and then you can see that it shows up there, right there. And thank you for Katie and Heidi for also, you know, joining in. You can see participation rates here, which is awesome as well. So, you know, if you can see who's answered, who's not, and then you can also hide the student names. So if you want to show, you know, a range of answers, but you don't want to, you know, show which student answered, you can do that there. So this is my intro to classical music lesson that I do. And so like I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but I have a prescribed curriculum. So if it were up to me, I don't know if I would exactly teach this for music appreciation, but this is what I have been instructed to do. So this is what I do. So this is my, so we do all of Western music from 50,000 years ago to present day in the first half of the semester. Second half of the semester, we study various genres. We just did jazz, we're doing hip hop. This unit, country, bluegrass, folk, rock and roll, that kind of thing. Okay, so then, so I always put a timer on all of my polls, because if you don't put a timer up, you will have students that will just never answer. But for some reason, when there's a timer, they say, oh, the pressure's on. So you can say, all right, start activity, and it'll count you down. And so then then this appears on their screen. So this is what their screen looks like. So all they have to do is, you know, choose their answer and then press next. So which of the following best describes monophony? All right, and then you can press next. And this is just a little quiz. Okay, which of the following is the best example of monophony? All right, and so they have a minute to kind of finish that, so they're not just kind of bumbling around saying, oh, I'll get to that. So this helps you with your pacing. So, and then on my end, so I will hide people's names. but you can see specifically, you know, who has answered what and their score out of. Look at all you doing the great things, remembering your music history. So you can see and assess in real time, which is awesome. All right, I'm going to keep going for the sake of time. All right, so then we kind of talk about this. All right, and here is an example of, you know, a video that I put in about musical texture. So on their end, it's going to look like this. And so click here to open web page. It'll open it up, and it'll start playing. So this is just, you know, a little video about texture. All right. The cool thing is, you know, when you press move on, it will exit out of the video screen as well. Let me talk about this. All right. And then we play, okay, this is Rose's favorite game show. Do you think this is absolute or program music? And so again, 15 seconds for this one. It doesn't need to be forever. Do you think The Storm at Sea is by Antonio Vivaldi is absolute or program music? And so then we go through that. But again, these quicker answers help kind of to move things around. So a couple of those. All right. So talking about the Rococo. Yes, I know this is a lot for high school music appreciation. Like I said, I'm doing the best I can with what I got. So we look at pictures from the Rococo, and then here's an example of a short answer. So tell students, choose 2 words that you think best describe these paintings, and then you can give them a reference. So if students, you know, I tell them you can use these if you want, or you can come up with your own adjectives. But then their answers will come up here. So light, airy. Okay, so they can also edit their answer afterwards. So if they submit something. Now this will, so there's a little bit of a delay. This will come up in real time, but say I really like student 1's answer. Press share, and then it goes out to all students. So all students will see this answer, and then you can discuss. All right. Let's see. So again, another video kind of demonstrating another video. I do lots of these check-ins, so if you notice lots of these polls, it gives students opportunity. I have to check, you know, they have to show up here, they have to answer. I can see if they're actually engaged. Also, another way to see if kids are engaged, and I'm sorry, whoever, all 5 of you, but Heidi, you have gone away from the screen. It goes red when students have clicked off or, you know, onto something else. So I'm sorry, Heidi. Please don't unfollow me. You're great. But it is really helpful to see, you know, if students are engaged or not that way too. So, like I said, I'm sorry, Heidi. Please don't hate me forever. All right. Okay, so this one, make a prediction. So again, the next style we are going to study is called Storm and Stress. Do you think Storm and Stress will be similar or different from the Rococo style? Why? So again, there are plenty of ways to engage students at higher level thinking, but they're not in person. Don't be afraid to get students to have these higher level thinking. Make a prediction is one of my favorite things, giving students, you know, what's coming up. What do you think? All right, moving along. I know this is kind of long. Okay, just want to get to the very end. Okay, so at the very end, hopefully, okay. So, at the very end, I have a game. And so this game is fun, but I also use it to assess students, kind of their exit ticket out the door. So it's called Time to Climb. It is an advanced feature, but I think Nearpod offers a trial for maybe 15 to 30 days. So if you're only going to be out for a month, it might be worth doing that trial. So it turns everything into a game, and so on students' ends, they get to choose a character. For my high school students, I said, if you're not into the cute characters, just pick the first one. It's fine. You are playing for the glory of today's Nearpod. Okay, press start. I'm gonna turn off the sound. Okay, and so people will show up, and then you press start, and it turns it into a game. So it's kind of a fun way to turn your exit ticket out the door into a game. Which musical texture became popular in the classical era? And so you get it right, nice job. If not, it will tell you the right answer at the end. Then when you get it right, you climb up depending on points. And so it's kind of like Kahoot, but built into Nearpod already. So you're not having to go to a separate space. All right. Heidi, sorry, I'm seeing, no, it's okay. And like I said, it's not 100% accurate all the time. Sometimes it shows red, but you just have clicked in a weird spot. So, all right, so say you don't answer, it's gonna tell me that I got it wrong, and then it will tell me the right answer. So again, it's great feedback for students. Okay, so that's just, all right, so I'm gonna end this session. And then the great thing is you can also see the report. So if you want to go back and take a look at how your students did, so this is where we just were. So I've done it a couple other times, but this is today's. So you can go in and you can see, who participated in what and what percentage overall they participated. If you want to count this as some sort of, participation grade, and so like a legitimate participation grade, like, okay, I'm engaged. That is a possibility. Sometimes I just, sometimes there's tech issues, so I tell students always send me an email or send me a chat if you're unable to participate. So that way it's not just that they can claim tech issues all the time that they're not participating. I remind them all the time, if you have tech issues, you need to email me. You can't just say afterwards, oh, it was a tech issue. And then, like I said, you can get into Time to Climb even to take a look at that there. So you can see overall data, and then for each question. Okay, so I think I just have one or two more things. Okay, one last thing that I did want to show you. So for the elementary people out there, I haven't forgotten about you. Even though I do teach middle school and high school, I was an elementary person first, and I do guest teach at the elementary level occasionally. So one thing that I really like is Shelly by Pitch Publication. Shelly, she has a Science of Sound. Oops, sorry, I thought I had that pulled up. She has a Science of Sound lesson, so I adapted it to be done virtually. And so you don't have to be afraid. Okay, so for this, definitely check out Shelly's product, but hers is so great. So, I played this for students. What is a sound? And there are these options. This looks a little funky because it's in Keynote and not PowerPoint like it's supposed to, but like I said, you can, remember, from Zoom, share out your computer sounds so students can hear them. And then Shelly has these great checking questions built in. So, if you want to do that in Nearpod, you can. If you want to use a separate polling thing, you can. If you want to set the polling up in, Zoom, you can. But it was a really great way. Shelly's has this presentation already made, so I didn't have to do very much work. It's a great presentation, and I was able to teach this Science of Sound lesson. So I've linked to that in the comments, and so I'll link to that in the comments if you would like to check out all of Shelly. She's a rock star. Okay, I have a question in the chat. Do you ever move between Nearpod and Zoom in the same class time and session? Yeah. So sometimes if I, want students to put something in chat specifically, I'll say, okay, head over to Zoom chat, or if I want them to see something on my screen. So during Nearpod, I always app share, or I always screen share. I log in as a student, and that way students, if for some reason they, can't access something or they can't get into Nearpod, they can at least follow along with what I'm doing on my end. And then again, it records for students who miss the lesson, so they can follow along with the student-paced one. So like I said, okay, so here you go. So for student-paced, you just give them this code, and they will open this up. All right, and so again, they'll be able to move through the slides. So it won't move in the same time as the recording. And that's not working right. Okay, so it's not working right here, but you have the concept. Case live lesson. And so, like I said, I will just screen share my screen the whole time. You can separate out the chat and, you can separate out the chat and the participants, so you can see that. You can separate that out here. So I have 2 monitors, so I will move these screens off to the other monitors so I can kind of keep an eye on everything over there if needed. And then, like I said, I'll just go ahead and share my screen and move through Nearpod that way. So students, again, who are watching the recording, they'll be able to see that. All right. Okay, so I think that is really all that I had for you for today. So I just want to say, before we go, teaching music virtually is possible. There's not a ton of research on it. This is what I'm doing my master's research on, and what I want to do eventually more research on, because there's such a huge lack of research, especially in comparison to the other arts and core subjects and all that, but it's possible. So we just need to breathe, don't panic, and be creative. So if you want to connect, like I said, Instagram is where I spend most of my time. It's at The Musical Rose, but you can also find me on my website, themusicalrose.com, email michelle@themusicalrose.com. I know that I have had a ton of questions and stuff, so I will try to get to your individual questions as quickly as I can, or at least direct you in some place. But yeah, so feel free to reach out. I am going to be taking over F-Flat Books tomorrow too, to give you a day in the life of a virtual music teacher. That'll be on Instagram, F-Flat Books. Get it? Ebooks, F-Flat Books. They are awesome, by the way. So definitely check out F-Flat Books as well. So if you have questions, I can definitely take a couple of questions if I didn't address them. If not, that's probably about it. So like I said, if you have a question, I know there's a delay. Thank you for your patience. I know this is not a super professional setup. I'm like presenting with, this is not my usual setup. This is what I could manage in 30 minutes. I don't usually do these kind of live events, but I'm happy to share, and hopefully this was helpful to you all to kind of see, how the resources are put in place, because you can only, resources are resources, but there's actual pedagogy even to virtual teaching. So awesome. All right, so I will hopefully okay. Oh, see something. Okay, yeah. So it's totally normal to feel nervous. I was like terrified when I first started. It's overwhelming. It's like, honestly, teachers who come to my virtual school, I'm a mentor now, but teachers who come in say it's basically like starting from year 1, because it is different. Even though it's the same musically, it's just a different way of, getting it done. So it's the same basic thing, but you kind of have to be creative. But don't panic. You can do it. I promise. Let me know if you need help. Awesome. All right, cool. All right, thank you all. And like I said, I will see you in the other virtual spaces. Thanks for coming out.